Welcome. Good morning. Welcome to the Foodvalley Innovation Insights. Today's session will be about Corporate Social Reporting Directive, the CSRD. It has been talk of town over the past month, actually over the past years, since the European Commission actually announced that it would be a reporting directive for ESG. And today we're here with a couple of our partners. Kees Kerstens from Solasia Solutions, welcome.
Good morning.
Florence Slop from Greenyard and Minke Burgers, Program Manager Protein within Foodvalley. We will be talking also on CSRD and next to what potential pitfalls could be, also on the opportunities that lay ahead in using a good reporting system on ESG and how it could actually advance innovation processes, hopefully for all of us to move forward. You online can ask questions. There's some audience here as well. Welcome. So there's opportunity for people to ask questions in the chat or live here, but also during the table talk. Please feel free, guests, to ask questions and interfere and interact with one another. My name is Marjolein Bras. I'm the CEO of Foodvalley and I will be moderating this conversation. Now, for CSRD, I'm sure that a lot of people heard about it. Just a quick introduction, Kees, on what CSRD actually is, because your company made it is set up to provide reporting opportunities for CSRD. So you are, I think, maybe the one at the table who knows best how to put this simply.
Simply, yes. Well, thank you for the opportunity of being here. So CSRD is part of the European Green Deal. And the idea behind the Green Deal is to mobilize capital towards sustainable business. And the European Union figured out that the only way to really have enough capital going to green activities is to make the private sector apply capital towards those activities. And it's part of a whole package of legislation. So it's not only CSRD, there's also legislation for financial institutions, but we can spend another hour on that. Yeah. But CSRD is a transparency legislation. So it's not about it's not a ranking, but it's just like financial reporting about being transparent on how your company is performing on environmental, social and governance topics. And the big advantage of CSRD is that it is now standardizing the way companies have to report on those topics. Yeah. So that 50,000 companies in Europe will all be applying the same standards, the same protocols, comply with the same legislation. And that will enable the European Commission to really track the progress towards ESG targets they have at the higher level.
So it's a huge framework, and how many years does it take to actually set something like this up?
Yeah, well, I think the European Union set a record because the Green Deal was implemented really fast. Yeah. CSRD was announced in 2021, and it will be applicable for listed companies already in this fiscal year. Yeah. So usually it takes longer. Yeah. Some people say it should have been here 20 years ago, but I think we're now really speeding up the process. And you also see, if you look at the global scale, that Europe is really leading the way. And the US is now following, but the US legislation is really less strict, less comprehensive than the one in Europe.
Yeah, so Europe is leading the way. This has advantages, but also some disadvantages. We might want to touch upon that as well. Yeah. But I like that Europe is leading the way in this respect, because it also might be a trigger for change or accelerated change on environmental, social, and governmental issues. Yeah. What does your company do?
Yeah, so we help companies to comply with this legislation. So we have a software platform which, based on operational data from companies, helps companies to create the CSRD reports on all the different E, S, and G topics. Yeah. And the advantage is that then an individual company doesn't have to read all the hundreds and pages of the legislation. So we've done that a couple of times, and we know how to then make the tables and the texts for in your annual report. And it's really, I keep on reiterating, it's just like creating a financial report, but then with different metrics.
Yeah.
But the idea to be transparent in numbers and in text about how your company is performing, that's really the essence of CSRD.
Yeah, how it's performing, but also what the goals are and the ambitions on that respect, but also what the mitigations options are, etc. So it's wider than just the reporting.
And that's where CSRD differs from financial reporting. It also has a forward-looking part, as they call it. So financial reporting is mostly about looking back at the last fiscal year, but CSRD also obliges company to look forward and to set targets for 2030 and 2050 when Europe wants to be climate neutral. Because then if you then add up all the plans of all the 50,000 companies, you have a good proxy of where the whole European Union is heading towards.
Yeah, beautiful. You work with Florence.
Yeah,
as well.
He was one of our first clients. So,
Greenyard is also a partner of Foodvalley. Florence,
still a happy partner, still a happy customer.
That's a good thing. Florence, so you have the task and the responsibility within Greenyard to actually, amongst other things, work on reporting for the ESGs, which will obviously be on this fiscal year. I can imagine that it takes quite a lot of preparation to get started. Can you maybe take us along in what Greenyard does for a start, but also then what your work has been so far in complying to this directive?
Right. Very quickly on Greenyard then. Greenyard is probably on your plate maybe even every day if you answer the what's for dinner question right. We do fruits and veg and we do it in fresh, frozen and prepared, and global leader in that field. In the Netherlands a lot to the blue supermarket, Albert Heijn. Then on CSRD. I think we are already pretty transparent if you look at our past reports. We have a limited assurance. We have a materiality assessment. Now for CSRD, a double materiality assessment. So you have a trajectory in learning how to report, what to report. And I think it's also important that you need to take along all of your entities. If you're a company with only one location, for example, you have to do one location, but CSRD starts with the big ones. All the smaller ones will come afterwards, coming years. But the big ones often have a lot of locations. So we really trained all of our locations to report in quite detail on all kinds of ESG topics. And that takes a while before everybody understands what to report, how to report it, that everybody in Germany, in Belgium, in France, but also in the US understand the same thing with a KPI. A simple example, even last year we noticed tons in USA could be something different than tons in Europe. That's something you then discover and you change. But so you need a way to explain it to all of your entities and to get them along. And I think you cannot do that in, let's say, 1 year. So if you start now for being compliant in next year, it would be pretty late. And
you already mentioned one of the words that maybe are not something that the audience might be familiar with is materiality assessment. What is it?
Well, to explain it in a simple way, you ask your stakeholders what is important for you on sustainability, on ESG topics. What are the important topics for us? What is our impact on the environment, on society, with the things that we do? And also, what is the impact of all of these kinds of aspects like climate change, biodiversity loss, diversity and inclusion on our company? Also the financial impact. So also how big is the impact and how important it is to your stakeholders, all your stakeholders, employees, investors, NGOs, customers, of course, suppliers. So you have all of the stakeholders around you. And you go into conversation with them. You do interviews. Some do it with questionnaires. I think interviews give a little bit more depth. It gives more richness to the answers that you get back. And then if it's material to you, so you have thresholds. But according to the CSRD, if it's material to you, you also have to report on it. So that is also one of the
important to you.
Yeah.
Material. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not only you who decides.
Yeah.
It's not you only you as a company. Is the stakeholders around you, and if it's their material, then you have to report on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like
it was quite complete on double materiality assessment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is also mandatory within CSRD that you. So a couple of years ago, you could do the materiality analysis only internally, and you ask your board and your internal people. But CSRD mandates that you also have to include external stakeholders, and also be transparent who you interacted with, what they said, what they thought. Yeah, to prevent that you do not mention topics in your ESG report which are important for your external stakeholders.
Yeah.
Maybe one thing to add on CSRD. So I think we are already quite transparent, and we go to the outside world with a lot of information on ESG.
You have been over the past years.
Yeah. And in that respect, CSRD adds quite some costs for a company like us. We have to report more and more and more, while we as a company are not becoming greener because we already did it. So it merely adds cost. But it might be a positive thing as well, because you can be compared to others. So they have to report as well in a similar way. So that is a very big advantage of CSRD. That is the same standards that you have to report on, and everybody has to report on the same standards. But it also adds quite some costs as well in the reporting part and efforts.
Yeah, it adds cost to you, and you say you have been reporting, and also obviously next to the reporting already doing quite some work on making your operations and the way you do business, and also your product is pretty sustainable as well.
That's the lucky part, that the product in itself is quite sustainable.
Yeah. I come back to you because I've got so many more questions, and I figure the audience might too. But I first would like to introduce Minke. Minke, you've been with Foodvalley for over over a year now. Yeah, and you first worked at Friesland Campina. And when you came to work for Foodvalley, you initially started working for a large European project, which is called Co-Fresh. And in that project, you also came across reporting CSRD and the potential thereof. So maybe you could give yourself a small introduction and then talk about that too.
Yeah, so my name is Minke. I work as a program manager, protein transition at Foodvalley. Indeed, the project that I started with was called Co-Fresh. It's about co-creating sustainable and competitive value chains for fruit and vegetables, actually in Europe. During that project, we took on a pilot case of fava beans, and one of the indicators that was assessed in creating products was an LCA. So we learned at baseline, so at a competitive product. So what could be the LCA score of this product? So the CO2 footprint. And we noticed, for example, that processing is, I'd say intensively processing really adds to the CO2 numbers. But we also learned what could be the impact of transport. So during that project, we already learned what could be the potential elements that you could steer also when you create new products. So that's where this whole, let's say, inspiration to learn more about it and also to understand the importance for our partners was raised. So
and your partners work, they are local farmers.
Indeed,
Yeah. Also, and what you notice there is obviously additional benefits to growing legumes. My favorite topic, obviously, fava beans. You said that additional benefit is often not seen or recognized, but you, as a collective, decided that would be potentially a way to.
We got a number to the CO2 footprint, which was of course lower than the higher processed products and even further lower than an animal comparison. And then we noticed that we just have this number now, a CO2 emission, but how to communicate about it and for the entrepreneur, what does it mean? What could be a reference point? Where can I steer? How can I use this in my sales story and in my sales pitch? Because by knowing what's relevant to your customer, you can also tap into that and also showcase what's going on in your organization. And it's not only the number, but it's also the benefit to the environment. So it could be biodiversity, it's soil quality, also on the social aspects, the importance of health to your end consumer. So if you have a high fiber product, for example, a good Nutri-Score, all these things matter in your sales pitch eventually, and you can really help your customer reaching their sustainability targets.
Yeah. I guess, Florence, that's also the way you position yourselves within Greenyard. You say, okay, we have all those numbers, yes, but we also position ourselves as a front runner in that respect, and maybe that helps you on different aspects too.
Yes, we try to at least. So we do a bit of storytelling. That's also one of the reasons that you bring the report to the outside world. We work for all of the big retailers in Europe. All of them actually are pretty tough on CSRD and all that kind of stuff as well. So they also want to have these sustainability records to be able to report themselves. So that's also part of the CSRD. It also trickles back into the chain. So if we want to report on the CSRD topics, we need to get the data from others. And actually, in that respect, fruits and veg is a complex world. It's not just around the corner, it's across the world, from the small farmer somewhere mid-America or Africa or whatever, until a very big farmer maybe here in the Netherlands somewhere in a greenhouse. All of that is part of the chain, and all of them have to report certain data to you in that respect.
So it asks a lot from chain partners.
Yeah.
What is their response in general?
If you want to deliver to Europe or to European retailers, you have to come with this data already. But of course, there are also companies across the world who might think, why do I need to deliver this data? I'm trying to do my best for the environment already, and then I have to do a lot of extra data. And there's also pressure on these change, of course. So they have to deliver more and more and more. And often it's there where you see the most impact of climate. The biggest impact of climate is not directly here in the Netherlands. It's more in other parts of the world. So yeah, farmers see directly the impact of climate and the reasons why. That's only part of the CSRD, the climate part, but they're directly confronted with that.
Yeah.
And in your selection process of suppliers, are you really actively?
On social compliance, yes. On climate impact, etc. Also, but it depends a bit. If you have a program that you can set up with a retailer. Margins in this business are quite thin, so you also need support of retailers to do, for example, specific programs on regenerative farming, that kind of stuff, or sustainable farming with farmers. So, for example, growing faba beans or the legumes here in the Netherlands or in the Benelux. That is an option where you can store more carbon also in the soil, and you need also funding for these kind of projects. And you also need to have scale in the end to make it interesting. So scale we can help sometimes to the first funding, but you often need also funding somewhere to start it up. Let's call it like that.
But the leading role of retailers, as Florence was mentioning, so if we compare different sectors, and it doesn't matter in what sector you are, CSRD is there for every sector, right? But the food and agri sector is pretty much leading the way, and the pressure from the retailers is a decisive thing there. Because you just are obliged to comply with what the retailers at the end of the chain are asking, and then it trickles down into all the way back to the farmer.
Yeah, they're leading the way, and it's also a very complex.
And it is
field
a complex
because
one.
It's international.
And you need, so you need your time to set up all the reporting lines and the data collection. And but if we compare it to other sectors where there's less a less dominant party in the chain, then it usually they take a little bit more time to comply with CSRD. Yeah, so
I partly agree. I think they're also leading the way, so they're helping or at least asking all of this data. But if you look at CSRD is also focused, and also EU taxonomy, on sectors that are most polluting.
Yeah.
And that is not the case in fruits and veg. So if you look at EU taxonomy, they're more looking at energy and the chemicals, etc. And there you have even more strict guidelines, or at least it's even more clear what to report and how to report. So for me, it's logical that the fruits and veg growing sector comes a little bit behind that. If you look at biodiversity, etc. So all the rules more or less have to be written still, also in EU taxonomy. But that's a logical approach to start with the ones that might have a bigger impact on the climate or on environment in general.
Yeah, maybe it's good to paint. So you have, we call it 2 waves, right? And Greenyard is in the first wave, so they have to report already on 24 as the fiscal year, but the majority of the companies is in the second wave. So only the listed ones are now, and that's a couple of thousand companies. But the big chunk of the CSRD compliant companies are the non-listed ones. And also, I think in your within Foodvalley, that's the large majority of the companies, and they did not have to report anything on ESG before. The listed ones had to, because there was legislation in place.
So the leap will be bigger.
The leap will be bigger. They have to to increase the speed significantly compared to the. So they have 1 year extra, but they're walking 10 years behind. So they have to have a.
But we have even to report during the game a bit. They are still more or less setting the rules during the game. So the ESRSs of the CSRD were only set halfway last year, or at least the final ones. Of course, you could see the direction for a couple of years already. And a lot of it is logic. Some is quite detailed. It's also a feast for investors. So they know a lot more about companies. But
CSRD has not been incorporated in Dutch law. So Dutch listed companies already have to report on this year, but only in July it will be incorporated in Dutch law. So it's really, it's changing the rules during the game. And that will hurt listed companies primarily. But the second wave, that's the biggest wave. And also the big wave of companies which really have to step up their game in a limited period of time.
And you rightfully said that's a large share of our partner base, small and medium, and also family offices, family companies. So it's not the listed ones per se. So what is your recommendation for those companies?
Look at the listed ones.
Yeah, look at the listed one. Speed up, start already. What else?
Just start measuring.
Yeah.
As also the smaller companies start measuring the logic things. Also, what matters to you. You would imagine that you measure energy, water, waste, your impacts on the environment. A lot of it is logic. So just start measuring and maybe step away from Excel, a little bit of advertisement. Use a tool like Salacia, for example. We have our own internal tool, but we use the Salacia tool for all the CO2, etc. calculations. But you can even start in Excel. It's also interesting for your people to know what is the impact that we have. Hey, we used less energy this year per kilogram product. Also good for your cost. Or we use more renewable energy because of solar panels on the roof. Hey, we have a story to tell.
Yeah, start measuring, start setting up your metrics, but also start doing maybe the interviews, you getting to understand what your various stakeholders actually want in this process. I heard you say that's quite a large share. maybe also informing your own employees and your
involve
stakeholder
a big
belt.
group.
Involve a big group.
Usually what we see at a lot of the non-listed companies, then one of the controllers get the task of being CSRD compliant, but then you're like a lone wolf in the organization.
Yeah.
And I think the successful examples are that then the lone wolf, they collect colleagues from HR, from finance, from IT, from operations, from sales, and really make it a company-wide initiative. Otherwise, you'll keep on being a lone wolf and only be asking your colleagues for data all the time. And then,
like there's that guy for the CSRD.
That's the guy of the CSRD, and he's not welcome at the company party.
Yeah, absolutely. And I heard that more often because it falls often within the portfolio of the CFO. A lot of complaints are that it is indeed that department is more aimed at risk management, control, not so much at impact drivenness or, putting it to use and in competitive edge, as we will be talking about as well. Is this one of the solutions to make it a more integral board, or should it maybe fall under the CEO, or what would potentially be a way to address this?
I report a bit. My direct boss is the CEO.
Yeah.
Also because sustainability and innovation is a strategic issue within Greenyard, but the CFO is as strategic as the CEO. So it's really the two of them in this game. The reporting part is more and more towards finance. Oh. It's strict rules. It's not storytelling. It's really knowing what you're talking about. It's a limited assurance that you have to get with it. At least for now, a limited assurance. In the future, a reasonable assurance, which means that you really have to be able to show that your figures are right. So I think it's the combination of the two. And that's often in companies, that if you have a good CEO, CFO, maybe sometimes COO to it, maybe in the future the CSO next to it, connecting the dots more or less. Oh. But it's the combination of strategy and reporting and
in your case, Greenyard takes innovation very serious. It's also linking to the CEO. Another thing that you hear often when you start to dive into CSRD and the discussions that you see happening obviously online, but also in seminars, that it will sort of hinder the competitiveness in Europe, that it is making it more difficult. You have been to many seminars and many discussions on this. Can you maybe give your viewpoint on this?
Yeah, so there are two contradictory opinions there. So some say it will give Europe the competitive advantage because we are going towards a sustainable world, and eventually everybody has to follow. Yep. Others say, but in other parts of the world, the rules are less strict, and at the short term, that might give, they have less cost. There's more externality, so then things are not in the price. But I was in my electric car here this morning. I heard on the business radio that they had a new study on the carbon border adjustment mechanism, so that Europe puts a tax on steel, for example, which comes from China, and that it's level playing field between Europe and China or India. And they predicted that it will give 12% increase of internal trade within Europe because they now have this border mechanism. So I think if everything falls into place, and that's still under discussion, right, in Brussels, what do we now actually put into legislation as parts of the Green Deal?
And how to protect the home market then?
And how to protect the home market, but the whole package has to be there. So only CSRD is not sufficient. That will not change the world. But the whole package might.
Yeah, and
that also links to the challenge that we notice that transport is only a limited part of the LCA. So then it really it's the story around it. Yeah. It's not only the CO2, it's also the impact, as mentioned earlier, on the nature side of things. And that's how you really have to build your story around your brand, about your products, next to the emissions, because then indeed you can question why not import from Mexico or Brazil if that has a lower price in terms of soy, for example.
So how have you been doing that? Because I know that you have been working with some experts on on this specific part, how to tell your story right. Yeah.
So we selected a couple of protein farmers. So it's a producer organization in the Netherlands. It's a joint force of farmers growing protein-rich crops, leguminous crops. And we selected a few of them with different crops, but also that produce consumer end products that then could be measured by Carbon Cloud in this case. Together with Wouter Staal, who has a lot of experience on this topic, and Green Food Lab, a communication.
He's the former founder he's the founder of the Yogurt Barn. Yeah,
Wouter Staal, yes, indeed. Yeah. And Isabel Boerdam and Kim Zoon from Green Food Lab. They could really help in that story building around your sustainability strategy, but also your brand strategy. So by bringing that number into a wider context, not only explaining about your emission, but also the steps you might have made going from animal to plant-based, or having that nutritional element to it. That really helped in...
I must now say pure plant instead of plant-based. But we will come to that later.
I'm curious. Tell us all about it.
I can tell it now. No, if you look at the difference between, we are a pure plant food company, and that's important for us because pure plant is really as close to crop as possible.
Yeah.
And as less processed as possible. And a lot of plant-based is a little bit better, but take a look at the pure plant stuff. You can feed yourself very well with pure plant food experience. So that's even better for the environment, probably. And probably as well for your health.
Yeah.
Maybe to revert a bit on your part, I think it's very important to also value not totally the topic. So back to you afterwards. Value the richness of growing fruits and veg here in the Benelux areas. So to see how much it brings, and that's the very good part of also doing the test with faba beans.
Yeah.
We do quite a lot of peas, 20,000 tons or so from these kinds of areas, including UK. But doing these kind of researches and seeing that it does store carbon in the soil, that it enriches the soil, that's a very important part of the project that you're doing.
Yeah. Tell the story, because it's often unheard.
Yeah, and it's also getting more insight. So it can be based still on statistical data or secondary data. But if you get the branded data, so it's really going into details of the specific crops in a specific region, then you even get better insights in the competitiveness versus imported products. I know they also do these kind of things with Donau soy, for example, and you really see a difference between the CO2 footprint even of animals consuming local legumes. And then, of course, also for human and the consumer products, you really make a significant difference. So that's also the next step that came out of this initiative that we performed. So the protein farmers work together now with Carbon Cloud to get that branded data out there to also showcase per crop what the actual impact is. So I think that's a great outcome.
Definitely.
Of the initiative.
So it also provides more insights in the additional benefits that it actually has. Pure plants or doing that kind of work.
Plants. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So for the competitiveness, it can definitely.
The future will tell.
The future will tell. Yeah. I'm curious to hear a bit more on what else you find actually doing this kind of work, because you have gotten a lot of customers over the past years. Because a lot of people need simple tools or reasonably simple tools to actually get the reporting going.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that the agri-food companies are actually sort of leading the way also because of the international change and the nature of the business.
Yeah.
What else have you learned
that food and agri companies have a lot of products.
Yeah.
So, and in terms of measurements, that's complicated, right? Because for CO2 or for biodiversity measures or for, you need conversion factors for each and every single product.
Yep.
So the number, we call it matches. So matching data from companies to environmental conversion factors. So in general, food and agri companies have a lot of products and then also need a lot of matching. So it's quite a bit of work. And one other thing we noticed in the last couple of years is that the differences between companies is really big. So some really have to start. They never made a carbon calculation or a circularity calculation or don't even know how many employees they have, let alone how many women and how many men. And others are as advanced as Greenyard, and both have to comply with the same legislation. So the advantage now is that you can learn from the most advanced ones. So the last couple of months, there have been annual reports from Philips, from Novo Nordisk, who are already like 80% CSRD ready. So you can learn from that. But many companies, and especially companies in that second wave, they're coming from far. And I think so. Step one is being compliant, right? So have a report where your accountant says, okay, this is, I can say that this, I can put my signature on it with limited assurance. But the second phase is to really make thorough plans to reduce your impact. And then I think within 2-3 years, companies will be super eager to learn from initiatives like yours, because that helps companies in the chain to reduce their emissions. And for some sectors, that's a lot easier than for others. So in the energy world, it's quite obvious, right, what you have to do. But in food and agri, because you touch so many different topics, helping companies to make the right decisions, I think the enormous amount of CSRD data which will be floating around in 2-3 years time, will really help companies to make better plans, and that's of course a huge benefit of this transparency.
Yeah. And
I think even a step 0 is start measuring. And also connecting to your auditor. What do you think? Am I ready? We also did a readiness assessment for the assurance part, and we also did now a readiness assessment and a gap analysis with your current auditor on CSRD. So where are we today? And be as transparent as possible. Just say, okay, this is what we have today. Do you think it's enough?
Yeah.
And that's sometimes difficult with your auditor, because do you want to tell them everything? I would say yes. You should, because that can help you to get better.
Team up with your auditor.
Team up.
Yeah. Team up with your colleagues, team up with your auditor, team up with your stakeholders.
Yeah, but for many companies, it's scary to put in your annual report that you don't have something. And that's, so you have to say, okay, I don't have this data yet, but next year I will. And that's the case for all companies. Nobody is perfect yet, but you have to be transparent on where you're not perfect and how you're going to improve.
Also with Triple D, I understood. Yeah. Can you explain about that? Because that is that you also mitigate and that you go and take action on certain items.
Yeah, and so on the CS Triple D, that's about due diligence in your chains, and what we see there is that companies have to team up, because doing that individually is super complicated. So in the textile business or in the food and agri business, doing due diligence on all your suppliers is a massive task. And there you see sector-wide approaches on how can we set this up collectively, because we are all using the same suppliers, we're all using the same manufacturing locations outside of Europe, and how can we then set up due diligence? But I think that's for many companies that's the next step. First is CSRD. CS-DD will be coming a bit later, unless you're based in Germany, then it's already in place. So you're not ready when you're CSRD ready, then there's more to come.
Yeah, Minke?
No, I was just referring to...
It's also important that you understand that part of the price of the product as well, and that it might increase the prices as well a little bit, and that might be good to have a more sustainable, more fair product, etc.
I think that was the whole idea, right? Why this all started. Yeah.
No.
But we're often quickly complaining about prices as consumers, while in fact all the food, etc., especially the healthy food, is not that expensive at all at this moment. It might be cheap at this moment.
Too cheap, maybe.
Yeah.
Last Innovation Insights, we had a discussion also on pricing, true pricing, which has obviously big links to this topic, because it requires a certain transparency and additional data to show what the true costs actually are. And we also discussed that 75% of the externalities in the food system actually are related to health. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of costs that you see in different areas of society, which is the healthcare sector.
If you eat more healthy, there's a lot of health costs that you
prevent. Yeah, definitely.
And maybe one thing also in the cost, it is about teaming up. If you really team up in a strategic way with your customers and you want to understand their customer, so what does the consumer want and how can we help him or her eat more pure plant? That's the way also to lower the cost as much as possible. And that's also about trust, about sharing data. What do we sell today to replenish the stores tomorrow? It's really working strategically together is an important one on keeping the cost price of fruits and veg as low as possible and as affordable as possible for all.
Yeah.
Because affordability is also, for all, an important part of sustainability.
Yeah. You see that happening more often, clearly, because we are facing quite complex challenges. That people see that it doesn't stop at your organization boundaries, clearly. But you need to start interacting, being more open, more transparent, also more open what you don't know yet, so that you can actually look for others.
It might be a side benefit from CSRD, right? Because they made Scope 3 obligatory. Yeah. So in the US they don't. It's only Scope 1 and 2. So it's only your own premises. Yeah. But in Europe they said no, Scope 3 is mandatory. So and that. For many companies that requires interaction with their upstream part, so their suppliers, but also their downstream part, their clients, and everything what happens with their products. Yeah. And so you can make reports without engaging with your supply chain, but that will not be a very good report. But the side benefit is that you also, as part of the CSRD journey, have to start working more closely with your important suppliers and partners. Yeah,
it's inherent to the type of work that Foodvalley clearly does. We help on topics that they have tried maybe on their own, but in many cases not being that successful or advancing that much. And in communities, but also in initiatives, we say it's pre-competitively putting partners together to work together. And you see that actually helps accelerate innovation quite a lot. So this, I hope, is also a good side benefit of the introduction of the CSRD. Yeah, that organizations go and look beyond their own organizations to make this more successful.
Yeah, it's also getting more insights on specific elements of your whole process. So in this example of the product and the project Call Fresh, it was also co-creation, and we worked together also with partners creating faba bean ingredients, so the processed, not the pure variants. And it was interesting even to them to understand what their impact is on this score, for example. So it was also raising awareness on how your production process could potentially be steered towards a more sustainable situation. And also for recipe development, you really require X amount of protein concentrate or isolate, or can you, for example, make use of certain vegetables or certain fibers that can also help improving the quality of the product. So it also makes, even though you're already doing very good things, to even get to a higher level. And if you're ready, I think you have a competitive edge also to your competitor that doesn't really have this data available yet, or isn't even aware on the impact of it. So that's really a help if you're starting early and not only with data collection, but also getting knowledge on what's crucial and what isn't.
I would, by the way, encourage the audience to ask questions. I've got one question, but it's a very technical one. So maybe also good, because that's... is it needed for CSRD that you calculate the CO2 emission of all your products individually looking at their specific LCA?
No.
No. Okay.
That's a very short answer.
I think that's also a part of. I said it brings also extra cost, huh? And often when there's extra cost, people are more willing to share. They're willing to share costs.
Yeah.
So I think it's also good if you take, for example, the LCA of specific products, that you have a database of products that. Not everybody of us is going to pay consultants to find the LCA of a cucumber grown in the Netherlands or grown in Morocco or Spain or whatever. So that there are LCA databases. I think that's also the level of detail that you want to go in the end.
And Europe is also setting up their own database, but that will take some years before they are filled with Europe-wide emission factors. So the general rule is that if you have detailed data, that you should use it. So if you have LCA on products, then you should use it. If you don't have it, then you choose another method.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to.
Should I go to the mic or just speak like this?
Go to the mic, please. Yeah.
So my name is Roel from Foodvalley. My question is, I've heard about concerns from, let's say, the second wave companies, that they already have difficulties getting certification for, let's say, certain ISO standardification or certificates for biological products right now. And these systems have been in place quite long, but now they also have to comply with the CSRD regulations. So my question is twofold. How do you see this? How will we deal with this? Will it be auditors or more the accountants working on these issues in the future?
Maybe for me, the auditor is part of the big accounting firms. So it's the accountant or the auditor. It's more or less they're quite colleagues from the big ones. So the limited assurance, for example, in our case, the accountancy company that does the financial part is the same accountancy company which does the sustainability or ESG part. And I think that's also good because it's an integrated report. So what you read in one part of the report is connected to the other part. In EU taxonomy, and this goes maybe too technical, what you have about CAPEX, OPEX, etc. So the OPEX part that you talk about in your sustainability part or the CAPEX should be comparable to the one in the financial part. So it's really interconnected. So it's really probably your accountant who does it. Maybe for the smaller ones, but that might be a question for you. I don't know if you know the answer. Is that you can also work with a smaller auditor than the bigger accountancy firms that you need as a company which is listed.
Yeah, but this is exactly the reason why they put limited assurance at the start and not reasonable assurance, because then the auditor really has to check if all your calculations are right. And limited assurance is basically a check of, do you have all the processes in place to create a good integrated report? And even smaller companies, so wave 2 companies, can set up processes in the coming 2 years to get that in place in good coordination with their auditors. But then part of that journey is to also to be transparent in what they don't have. And that's what we've been talking about before. So if you really don't have any Scope 3 data, then you have to write down in your report that you don't have Scope 3 data. That's not nice to write in your annual report, but at least it's being transparent. And for companies with less than 750 employees, there's phase in. So on some topics, you get additional years to reach the level which will be reached by the listed companies earlier.
Yeah.
Do you see it already with the companies you worked with in the Faba Bean project, that this is a topic that they're
The interest is definitely growing, and of course that's also because plant-based products show to have a lower footprint than animal-based products. So, for example, you see retailers also introducing hybrid kind of products. So this data really helps to start a more sustainable product development.
For upcycling also.
Yeah, and the same is indeed for upcycling. And it's also one of the elements that our upcycling team is working on. So what could be the lower impact of a side stream versus an initial stream, but also how to calculate that. So that's also still work in progress. So how to allocate certain numbers if you use side streams. Yeah. So it's a very interesting topic, and we really want to steer also in these discussions, being part of round tables, to raise this awareness that this should be taken into account from the start.
Yeah, because the initiatives that are being developed on upcycling, upcycled ingredients, plant or pure plant, all those innovation trajectories, they always look obviously at the additional benefits that it has. To use a tool like a CSRD to actually make your product worth more, or at least be more of an attractive partner in that whole trajectory. Even for financiers, I noticed that investments go in different directions if you can show the worth of it, of the additional benefit.
At least the investments of pension funds and banks, there will be more regulated. Of course, there's more money in the market than only that, but yes, you can see it going there, I guess so.
Yeah, if I would be a financier, I would be financing something that is sustainable in the long run. But,
at least you can compare the sector partners. You can compare different companies in the same sector, how they perform towards each other. And already on sustainability, it's a long-known fact that the more sustainable companies tend to be there longer.
And with higher financial benefits.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe sometimes the extremes are sometimes before the market. So there will also be very sustainable companies or very innovative companies that just don't make it.
No.
So that's also a fact. But the ones that pay attention to it, I think that is maybe a sideline to the ones with a better sustainability performance, that pay real attention to it. I think that shows that it's part of your strategy. And if you have a good strategy, it's always important to have a good benefit as well, of course, not only on sustainability.
Yeah.
And to present it and showcase it and also show you are a leader in this aspect really helps also for others to show how to do it and be that inspiration also in the practical side of things.
Yeah.
And there, I think there you also see a downside of CSRD because what you can tell is being restricted, right? So 5 years ago, you could really make nice marketing stories about how green your brand was. Yeah. And that has been put into a lot more limitations by CSRD, by anti-greenwashing, by... So the marketeers would like to tell many of our clients, they take our results and then start making a marketing story out of it. And there the CFO then steps in and says, well, let's first get the compliance in place. And then, so the
right measurements needs to be below your storyline.
Yeah.
And so it has to be validated. And
of course.
And then in some cases you get brownwashing, that
report too little.
Report too little or be very restricted in their taxonomy and say, oh, this is maybe not really eligible or aligned. And then they put it in.
Yeah, it's like a pendulum.
It's a pendulum.
It's too much, too little, not right, too little.
Yeah, but I think in general, the last 10 years, it was a lot of marketing. And then now the coming 5 years, it will be a little bit too much compliant, maybe. And then eventually we'll end up somewhere in the middle.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a healthy way. Go through the middle in balance. Can I give you the floor? We're near in the end, so there's one more question.
My name is Mariska, and I work at P2 Process and Project Managers, and I have a question for Greenyard. I was curious, after analyzing all the data, did you find any surprises in your CO2 emissions, and how did it impact your strategic agenda?
Yeah. No, not really. But we are already measuring CO2 or the fuels, fossil fuels, etc., that we use for quite a long time. So we know where to put the changes. So the first part of our 50% CO2 reduction is for 2025, and that's mainly renewable energy. And it may not sound innovative, but every extra penny that we spend, we have to earn back. And the fruits and veg is really very thin margins, large turnovers, very thin margins. And the next steps, we know that will be a natural gas, trying to electrify a part of our processes. Good thing in the Netherlands is here the government supports it. If you want to move away from gas, a gas boiler to an e-boiler, a water cooker versus a steam kettle, more or less, the government supports it. In Belgium, not yet. So then we have to find other ways to go there from a gas-fired boiler to an e-boiler. But we know where we need to go. So maybe no surprises, but that was because we measured it already.
Yeah.
And it helps to put strategy in place. And then one thing extra, it might help even more to have a sustainability-linked loan. And then it helps to have a good reporting. And a sustainability-linked loan with your investors, with your banks, that has also targets, in this case, on sustainability, on CO2 emissions. So there's an extra trigger, only a little bit again, little bit lower interest rate, very little bit. But it helps. Every little step helps.
Yeah. I'm sure it helps making good strategic decisions if you have more insights in any case.
You're right.
Yeah.
And in all cases, the emission hotspots are always in the core processes of a company. And what you saw in the last couple of years, if company started developing sustainability project, it was electric vehicles, sustainable catering, but everything outside of the core of the business. And now, if you really do it right, you see that your top 5 emission hotspots will always be in the core of your business. So for Greenyard, it's the purchase of fruit and vegetables and transport and a couple of. So it doesn't really make sense for Greenyard to start driving electrical vehicles, although they do it. But the main reduction measures for each
is your own operation.
Is your own operation, and that's in all cases super clear if you make a good ESG report.
Yeah. So just to summarize, because we're nearing the end, unfortunately, you will be giving a masterclass after this session, which will be here in the office. Unfortunately, not for the online participants. We've seen that listed companies like yourself compliments Florence on all the work that you've already done on this, and luckily Greenyard.
Steps in the right direction.
It's small steps in the right direction, but I know it's a huge part of your current whereabouts. So for our partners, the smaller but also medium-sized, it's an important topic as well. And your recommendations were very clear. It's like start early and start measuring, but also involve many stakeholders in this trajectory to see where the materiality actually lays. But also don't do it from one department only, or one person the only that is never going to be invited to the Christmas party ever again. But make it the company-wide strategic asset, and position it as such as well, because it can influence your strategic decisions in the long run. Show your vulnerability. I actually like that one as well, because it's not only your operation scope 1 or 2, but it's also what you don't know yet, whether that's wider up in the value chain, but also whether it's the things you just simply don't know yet because you haven't been paying attention, because you were paying attention to other stuff. So if you open up to that and also reach out to partners in that ecosystem that you could potentially work with, that would be greatly beneficial. And then show. That's a very good addition, Minke, as well. Like, show what you do and what you add for benefits, because it will help other companies to make the right choices in that respect. And also it will help you maybe in getting your business financed, or other way, finding the right partners that have different kinds of values and norms to do business. So one final remark from each one of you, and if we've got some time left, one final remark, please.
Yeah, work together, I would say. Yeah, and use the benefits of initiatives like Foodvalley or reinventing the wheel again and again is we just don't have the time for that. So work together, find your peers within similar companies,
and use what's already there,
and
to
use
do
what's
your
already
promotion
there.
that you're not doing, but you have a good tool.
So use what's there. Get started now and work together. Yeah. That's 3 actually.
They sort of resemble what I just said. It's like 6 then.
All right. I always end with the call to eat more fruits and veg. And that's best for your health and for sustainability. So you have impact with the answer to the what's for dinner question, real impact.
Yeah, I think the health team will applaud this.
Yes.
It actually links perfectly. I wanted to say go more plant-based because it's healthier and more sustainable. So and show it, present it.
Show it, yeah, indeed. So
maybe one last, Marjolein, is also like the projects that you guys are doing. So the innovative projects on growing other stuff in the Netherlands. It's extremely important to put more money to this kind of development of keeping stuff growing here, growing our own food, etc. So that's an applause to Foodvalley in running these kinds of projects. Sometimes it might not be relevant for the Netherlands, but it's relevant for the sector as a whole, and it's relevant to keep the sector going as well.
And a big applause to all the innovators that actually on the front line to do that as well, in the fields, but also in the factories and in the shops and the supermarkets. So a couple of remarks to round it off. The next Innovation Insights will be in September. And we always look at what you find interesting as an audience and our partner base to listen, to hear more about. Send us your topics, and we will look within our partner base and beyond what the best possible speakers and panelists will be. Coming up next is F&A Next. It's a large conference for investors, startups and corporates, mostly on driving innovation. It's on the 22nd and the 23rd of May here in Wageningen, actually at the campus in the Omnia building. And then there is our partner event. It will be a large event. I'm not sure whether I can already mention where it is, but it's a beautiful location. It's not here because it's going to be way bigger than we can handle. So it's going to be our 20-year anniversary. And please, you're all invited. And if you aren't a partner yet, but you think, yes, this might be interesting, or you would like to join some of our initiatives, whether it's Regen or the upcycling community or the healthier food community, let us know at partner@foodvalley.nl. And I would like to conclude with thanking the panelists, because I really enjoyed that extra information. It always leaves me with more thirst for more information on this topic. I had the same with true pricing. But unfortunately, we only have an hour. But then again, it will be with us, this topic, for the long run. So I'm sure we get more opportunity. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the day.
Thank
you.